What's up guys, this is Concording TCG back with another video, and today I wanted to go over my set 14 tier list for Vanguard Zero Global. I did have footage from the stream. I did do this on stream first, but to be honest I didn't really like it, so we're redoing it for YouTube so you guys can also see how I feel about the meta. Of course we're going to break this down. Usually I do like the 5 Bs of the meta, but none of that. We're just going to break it down into 4 tiers: the unga tier, the fringe tier, quality, and struggle bus. Basically everything that's here is playable at the highest level. It's just, especially if your stuff is in the struggle bus category, you really got to know what you're doing. You're going to have a lot more harder matchups if your deck's in struggle bus than it is in like the tier 1. And of course, just before I get started, if your deck isn't very well represented on this tier list, or I don't think very highly of it, that doesn't mean you should stop playing the decks you enjoy playing. Continue to play what you like playing, but if you're really into playing for like cash prize events or trying to get a feel for just how to prepare better, this could be a great way to help you do so and still play the decks you like playing. Anyways, let's get into it. So first we're going to talk about the struggle bus. What I'll do is I'll put everything on the tier list for that category, and then I'll talk about important stuff in that category. So in struggle bus, nothing is really ordered until we get to the top unga bunga tier, your tier 1s. So I'll kind of pair these as I see fit. So I think that decks like Genesis, Polaris, and as an extension like Leopold Reverse and that whole Great Nature package, I think Ezreal also falls in this category, and Sook. If you high roll, if you hit the pieces you need, you can really compete very well with the decks up here, but whether it's because of like really popular decks being bad matchups or the deck not being as consistent as it needs to be in this current meta, these decks seem to fall short a little bit. They do have the power to deal with stuff up here, but it just feels like it falls short. I think stuff like Neo Nectar, Battle Sisters, Grand Blue, MLB, and Coral, they're not unplayable. It's just like you really need to know what you're doing, and they're really there for like niche counterpick kind of stuff. And they don't really fit into this 3 to 6 meta that we have going on right now, as you'll kind of see as we go up in the tier list. There's not really much else to say about struggle bus. Like I said, just because your deck is here doesn't mean it's unplayable. It's like you just really got to know what you're doing. And so this kind of covers the I guess this will cover the quality tier. Your quality tier is like your tier 2s. Everything in quality tier is just, it's gonna work, it's fairly consistent, and it's gonna have less problems with the meta than your struggle bus decks. But even still, it's still not like the cream of the crop. It's not gonna, like, unless you really know what you're doing, like I said, you're probably not gonna be able to just like pick it up and take it to event and do well. To kind of go over some things, I think that stuff like Jewel Knights, both variants of Aquas, so like your good stuff Aquas with regular Maelstrom and then the Glory Maelstrom cross ride, your Transcore and Friends, that being like Transcore plus Tetra Driver, Transcore plus Glory Maelstrom. Those decks are really good, they're very consistent, and they have great matchups against a lot of the meta. It's just with decks like LJ being very popular and a couple of other problematic decks, it makes it really hard to viably play this deck in the meta. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's just popularity of other decks are really suppressing the success of things like Aquas and Jewel Knights. I did also want to highlight Pale Moon. I think Pale Moon's in a very similar spot. I do think that Silverthorns, like personally for me, the Dreamy Fortress build will always be goated. It has a bad CBD matchup, bad LJ matchup, but similar to like kind of Aquas and Jewel Knights, it does relatively well against everything else, and it's got a kind of cute niche counter against Reiji, assuming you can draw on the PGs. Silverthorns are just really good. They're the only way you're going to be able to facilitate a proper 3 to 6 push with extra. So if you're really trying to find a way to play Pale Moon and facilitate that, push my opponent from 3 damage to 6 damage, you're going to want to play just the Silverthorn package. But if you want to like kind of bring it as a counter pick, then I think that Dreaming Fortress works really well. DP is kind of like a hidden boss, similar to Dreamy Fortress is a hidden boss. Kaiser can just kind of shut off decks, and I think we've all been in that position where we've been Kaisered, or you know, they just hit a lot of crits. They're very consistent with crits. Feels kind of like a mix between MLB and Reiji. So it's just a really good aggressive deck. You've probably been seeing this a lot on rank. That's pretty much all I've been fighting against on rank. I think libs are very good, but they're a little clunky. We will get Zenith, we'll get other stuff to kind of supplement the package and make it more consistent in the next couple of sets, but for now, it's just an average deck. It can't really 3-6, but it does have Retire in the form of Blaster Blade Liberator and a bunch of other cool mechanics going on, so I don't think it's completely tapped out. It's got a long way to go. And of course, I did want to highlight stuff like Nubatamas and Angel Feathers. I think that these decks are pretty good. Nubatamas has a really niche factor in that because you can discard cards from your opponent's hand, you can really punish other decks. What you'll notice is that as we go up in the tier list, and just in general, most decks nowadays are very combo piece reliant. You're going to need a lot of pieces to really facilitate maximum damage, and when Nubatamas is getting rid of your PGs, it's discarding your Novels, it's discarding your Aquaforce pieces or whatever deck you're playing. It's going to be really hard to do the combos you want to do. You're just not going to have the hand for it. You're not going to have the PGs. So I think it's pretty good in that regard. I'm just not too sure about the consistency of Nubatama, but we've been seeing a lot of success for Nubatamas from a ton of events. So if you have Nubatamas, try it out. It might work for you. And of course, Good Stuff Sarah. It's nice because it's very consistent. It's very flexible. It's got a very nice card pool. And overall, it's just really easy to find PGs, which is really important against a couple of decks that we're about to go into. Next, we're going to do like our tier 1.5, our Fringe. I kind of classify this as like your gatekeepers. These decks are really what's pretty much anything above Fringe and above is really what sets the trend for the meta, I feel like. And without these decks, I think the meta will be very different, and the deck makeup of your events would be very different. I have 3 decks in Fringe. I'm going to put Erads, and then both like Galaxy Blau, your Blau variants, and of course your like Ethics variants. I think Ethics, Blau, and Erads really are what kind of helped to push this 3-6 meta. Erads was like our first really strong 3-6 deck, I feel like, for this meta. They're not as consistent, and maybe a couple of sets ago, people weren't tired of playing them, and there weren't other decks that did what they did better. But now you have Revengers, there's a bunch of other decks that do what Erads do, but they're more consistent. I feel like consistency is a problem. Like if you miss the break ride, it's really hard, but it's still a flexible deck. It's still very strong. And of course with Blaus, you have to draw into your pieces. So it's on a high roll, it's up here. And when it's not high rolling, it's like here. So I decided to put it in between. I think it really helps. And it's one of the few decks that can actually push from 2 to 6, which is really, really strong, especially against some of these other decks. Finally, we have the Unga Bunga tier. These decks, I put 5 decks here, the dynamic 5 of the meta. They really help set the trend. These are probably the decks you're going to see the most often. Let's put them in order, of course. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put Spikes in 4th, and I'm going to go ahead and put LJ in 5th. Okay, so let's go over it. So in 5th, I have CBD LJ package. I think overall the deck's really strong. It's just CBD is a little resource heavy, and sometimes you're not going to be able to do all the CBD stuff that you're going to want to do. You're not going to be able to CBD 3 times a game all the time. So sometimes I find it a little bit hard to continuously get all of the locks that I want every game. But it's just a very flexible deck. They have great cards like Colony Maker, Mobius Breath, 12k attackers. They have Palladium, Lanthanum. They have pretty much a tool to do whatever they need to do. So very good card pool to support the CBD package. So overall, the clan is just really strong right now, and it's very popular. So I think that also pushes it up here. Next, we have Spike Brothers. Spike Brothers are still very good. Bad in Dragger turns are some of the deadliest combos in the game. They still are, and it was one of the first like really big 3-6 decks, and it's the reason why it's higher than Nova Grappler stuff is because I think it's a little bit more consistent. Like Nova Grapplers, your ceiling is higher, like how much can you high roll, but your floor is much lower with Novas. With Spikes, I think the floor is a little bit higher, so it's a little bit more consistent. It's a little bit more average. But the ceiling's also lower. You're not going to get as many attacks as like a Nova in a good position. So it can still do a ton of damage. It's really easy to push from 3 to 6. It can push from 2 to 6. and it also finds PGs, which is really nice against like Reiji. I think it just has pretty good matchups against most of the meta. Next we'll have Reiji. Reiji's good. It really bullies this break ride meta. It's this limit break meta. If your deck relies on a break ride and you need your break ride to go off to beat Reiji, you're probably gonna have a hard time against Reiji. So you're gonna notice like people often tech in decks like Angels. You'll even see, I don't have it on the list, but you even see some Murakumo where they can have the Shiryuki plus the PGs. That's 7 chances to deny damage. It's very strong. OTT, you'll sometimes see people tech OTT into Reiji because you need a non-limit break deck, a non-break ride deck to deal with them, because that 3 crit on Reiji is just so polarizing. It's just, can they get to the 15 crit? Sometimes they miss, and when they miss, it's a great time, but they really punish people for playing break rides, and puts a lot more emphasis on decks like Kagero, decks like OTT, decks like Angels, things that don't need the break ride to maximize their plays. Next, the top 2 decks of the meta. Some people say it's Kagero, and some people say it's Revengers. I think on paper, Revengers just does way more than Kagero, but let's be real, Kagero is an absolute bully right now. Novell turns off triggers. Novell clears board too for 3 Counterblast, 3 Soul Blast, and a Persona Blast. It's quite heavy, but if you're using the Novell skill, you're probably winning. It constantly hits drive checks because of the Dote skill and the Triple D skill. So it just hits a lot of drive checks. It's going to see its heals. It's going to see its PGs. It's got the PG Surge starter. It just does everything. It doesn't 3 to 6 as well as some of these other decks, but it has this very niche control aspect and something akin to that of a Silent Tom finisher. So it finishes well. It controls the board well. It's just very well suited right now for this meta, and it's also very consistent. I don't want you guys to forget that. Novell is extremely consistent. And finally, we have Revengers. Like I said, they can 3 to 6. They have Retire. They can search out the Retire with the Break Ride. If they miss their Break Ride, it still hurts, but it's not as bad as like if Erads missed their Break Ride or if Spikes missed their Break Ride. I think that Revengers is one of the few decks that if you miss your Break Ride, you can still pop off. You can still do a ton of damage, do most of your combos. It's just you're not going to be able to search that Nemain or the Blaster Dark Revenger or whatever you want to search. But yeah, this is my tier list, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll also post this on Twitter, so that way you guys can make your own, and you guys can either @ me on Twitter or you can put it in the Kokorin TCG Discord. The link will be in the description below, and we can talk more about this if you guys feel like you can make a better tier list than mine. But anyways, guys, this is Kokorin TCG signing off.